Today we're going to start on the top of Yud Gimel Amud Bais, the second line. In yeshivas, they're not so into Daf Yomi. It's too fast. You don't remember it and all of that. So they said like this: that in learning Torah, there's two parts. First is that you're not allowed to waste time, bittul Torah, and then there's learning Torah. So the Daf Yomi, they said it's not bittul Torah, but learning Torah it's also not.
Back in the olden days, in the 70s, people would say, "Can you take a Jewish person to the bathroom?" And then some people say, "Can you take a Jewish person out of the bathroom?"
So the Munkacher was against the Daf Yomi.
Who was?
The Munkacher, the Minchas Elazar. So he sent his Rabbi to check up on the people to see if they were learning what they were doing. So he didn't. The Rabbi didn't really get what was going on. So he comes back to the Munkacher. He says, "Someone must have tipped them off because they all had Gemaras out." So I guess he thought the Daf Yomi meant the newspaper, because the Daf Yomi sounds like a newspaper. Okay, so yesterday we learned that that the way acquisition works with a non-Jew is with money. The way acquisition works with the Jew is with Mashiach. So actually I should clarify that anything that I could lift up, I'm supposed to do Hagbah on. I lift it up, let's say you sell this to me, so I lift it up. Something that I don't lift up, then I pull it. Like an animal, I would pull it. Maybe a small animal I could lift it up, but a larger animal I pull it. It's Mashiach, I pull it. And anything that's not movable, then you need a document, or you use contract, or you can make a money, or you can make a chazaka. Chazaka is you show ownership by walking along the boundaries or making an improvement in the fence or something like that. Okay, so our statement was from Rabbi that says that money works in non-Jewish law. That's right. Today we start Amri. They asked the question. According to the Amemar has a totally different opinion. Amemar holds that Mashiach pulling works for a non-Jew. It's different than what Rabbi was saying before. So, in the Gemara yesterday, we had psukim that proved that what works for a Jew does not work for a non-Jew. What were the psukim? Amisecha. The way you make an acquisition, this is how you do it for Amisecha. For your Amisecha is from someone from your nation, from your friend. But for a non-Jew, it works differently. So we understood that from your friend you use Mashiach. Miyad Amisecha, from his hand. In other words, you pull it. But for someone that's not Jewish, that money, that would use money. So according to our Meimar, that holds Mashiach also works for a non-Jew. So what does he do with Amisecha? So Hanichi Savalak Rabbi Yochanan. What I mentioned yesterday, dinner from Rabbi Yochanan, he says the Amar Dvar Torah Ma'is Kindness, that really according to the Torah, really money is the real acquisition. So gesund, really we use money for the acquisition. Once you hand over the money, the item becomes yours whether you took it or not. That's according to the Torah. However, the rabbis made a decree because a person would take the money and then leave the items in his attic when there was a fire and wouldn't rescue them. So the rabbis made a decree that you have to do Mashiach, that you have to actually take it. So if he holds like Rabbi Yochanan, that what's the biblical acquisition is money, the exchange of money. So then Mashiach loy, but not Mashiach. Bachad's in loikani, loikanya. Mashiach does not work. So ahani lamisecha bekesef. Ahani lamisecha, it helps. Ahani means it helps. We use the word amisecha to teach me that to your friend, to another Jew, acquisition is money. But for a guy, you have to pull it. So according to our Meimar, we do exactly the opposite what we did before. Yesterday we learned that how do you make an acquisition for a Jew? You pull it. Amisecha. And how do you make an acquisition for a guy? It has to be different. So that has to be money. So if, according to our Meimar, that says a guy also pulls it for an acquisition. So what does he do with the word amisecha? So the explanation is that really biblically a Jew is supposed to use money. The rabbis made a decree that a Jew uses a mashicha, but on the biblical law, the Jew uses money and the guy uses mashicha. Now there's a rabbinic decree that a Jew also uses mashicha. So that's going to fit.
What it comes out to, if you sell the same item to a Jew and a goy, but it's still in your warehouse, you take the money, but you still have it, and the warehouse burns down. With the Jew, you have the risk of loss, and with the goy, he owns it. That's what this means, right?
So if money would acquire
If
for a guy, then it would have been sold to the guy.
He owns it.
He owns it,
You don't
and the
have to
Jew
rescue it.
never.
The Jew doesn't own
The
it.
Jew never bought it. You would have to give the money back.
Does the Mashiach go both ways?
It means whichever one pulls it. Mashicha is the buyer pulls it.
The buyer always pulls it.
Yeah.
And we're talking only about metatlan, things that can be pulled.
Yeah.
So if they can't be, how does a member hold that kesef is good being begoy than the amisecha?
A Meimar holds that kesef doesn't work for a guy.
Oh yes, so how did the kesef after their kach mimeni? How did the Rabban Bar Maras Hamash pay?
No, that's
No, that's a problem.
that's a property.
Well, I just asked the question.
What?
Does a property by a guy?
A property.
Oh,
is
a property
different.
is going to
It's
work
different
the same.
anyway, yeah.
That's a good answer. It's a property. So a property is going to work with money. Here we're talking about
Well, no, that was my question.
yeah.
Does-
No,
with
the
the
movable objects.
guy only-
There's going to be a
Oh, yeah,
difference
movable,
between.
That's where the question is.
That's my
Very good. If a Meimar holds like Rish Lakish, then a Mashicha Mefereshes Batayra, that says that really you have to do Mashicha for a Jew. So La Misecha b'Mashicha, Leivid Kechavim, Leivid Kechavim b'Mashicha. And according to a Meimar, a guy also has Mashicha. This is the original question. So La Misecha Lamali. So what do we do with Amisecha? That's coming to exclude, to show me that there's a difference between a Jew and a guy. Amri, they said, what do we do with Amisecha? La Misecha Tamachzarina. If you look at that pasuk that talks about economy ad Misecha, the pasuk concludes that al tainu ish asachiv, a person should not overcharge his brother. When you make an acquisition, you shouldn't overcharge him for the item. It's coming to tell me that a Jew you're not allowed to overcharge. A guy you're allowed to overcharge. And therefore, la misecha, if you overcharge him at the machzarina, you have to return the extra money. V'yat machzarina lekanani, but you don't return it to a Canaanite, to a non-Jew. Gemara says lekanani me al tainu ish asachiv nafka. Don't tell me Amisecha is telling me that. It says clearly in the pasuk, al tainu ish asachiv, a man can't overcharge his brother, which means automatically that a non-Jew you can. So I have another pasuk for that. So what do I need Amisecha for? The Gemara says, Chad beknani v'chad behektish. Someone would be selling something to hektish, and he overcharges. He doesn't get his money back. He doesn't return the money to hektish. It only applies to achiv, to his brother. Utrichi. And this is really necessary. I wouldn't have known this if I just would have said one of them. Why? Because of Rachman Echad, if it would have said Al Tainu Ish Asachiv, it wouldn't have said Amisecha. So then, Havamin El Knani Hudein Layayna. I would have thought this halacha that you can overcharge, that you don't have to return the overcharged money. I would have thought it only applies to a guy. Abel Hektish Yesh Laina. I would have thought, but to a non-Jew to Hektish there is a na. Kamash Malan that by Hektish there's no ina as well. If you overcharge the temple, you don't have to return the money. Okay.
Is a not a mitzvah deraisa?
Yeah. Now the Gemara says,
What happens before Pesach? Jewish stores don't.
Yeah.
Sounds
It has
like
to do with
this-
food. I know it's not just.
Sounds like a serious I know.
No,
but
yeah, but it has to do with the person not knowing also.
They don't know.
Oh,
They
yeah?
don't trust me.
Uh-huh.
Come to the store, you have no clue. No prices, no nothing.
So the explanation is, does it apply to food items? I'm not sure if it applies to food items.
In today's day and age, it would be very hard to make a living if you only marked up your prices a sixth.
No. We're not talking about if you can mark up whatever you want. If this is
No,
the
that's
going,
what I
no,
know.
no,
That's
no, that's not what it is. If you can mark up your prices anything you want as long as that's the going price.
Yeah, is that what I know?
Above the going price, the going price. If you decide everybody's selling a yogurt for $2, and you decide to go 6 more, you're okay. But if you go above the 6, that's when you have a problem. If somebody else sells it
There's
for
2 stages there, but at a 6, then you just return the above the 6. It's a whole thing. It's mekachtais. Then but something like that. But that's correct. That it's
1/6 over the purchase price.
No,
So you pay
no,
5,
no.
you sell for 6.
No, it's over the going rate.
the going rate, it has to be
okay.
shar shuk.
Got it.
So now the Gemara says,
This footnote says that it should be noted that it's prohibited to intentionally overcharge a goy or employ deception in general, Chulin 94a. But if a goy was overcharged unintentionally, one is not obligated to return the sum of the overcharge.
uh-huh. So listen to this. Hani chalamanda amar. This makes sense to say that Amisecha is telling me that you can overcharge a guy. Lamanda amar gezela yaser. If you hold that you're not allowed to steal from a non-Jew, so I know this. So I have a special pasuk that tells me you're not allowed to steal. Okay, but you don't have to return the overcharge. You don't have to return that. But if you hold that you're allowed to steal outright from a guy, I know me buy. So do you need a pasuk that tells me that you don't have to return the overcharge? You could have taken his money outright, and now you're telling me that you don't have to return it. It doesn't make sense. So Amri, they answer like this: according to that opinion, there is no way of learning a meimar other than al kachach Rabbi Yochanan Tzvir. Like the only way you can learn a meimar that holds that Mashiach is an acquisition for a guy is if I hold that the acquisition for the Jew is money. And Amisecha tells me that for a guy money doesn't work. Only Mashiach works. And then, in other words, I'm using Amisecha to tell me the acquisition. But if you want to use Amisecha to tell me Aina, that's not going to work according to the opinion that holds that you're allowed to steal from a guy. So I just want to read to you something from here. So, this is a Torah Tamima. So he quotes over here. He's very careful with his to be politically correct. He's careful.
Who's
The Baruch Halevi Epstein. He's the son of the Aruch HaShulchan, right? Rabbi Chiel Michal Halevi Epstein. So he's famous because he's the nephew of the Netziv. So he writes over here. He quotes the Beragayla. The Beragayla at the beginning of Siman Shin Mem Ches. He says, I'm writing this because I saw many people get rich by tricking the non-Jews, and they got very rich. However, they weren't successful, and they lost all their money, and they didn't leave anything afterwards. And there's other people that made a Kiddush Hashem, and they returned money to Goyim, even a lot of money. And in the end, they left over for their inheritance to their children. So he says, and if you think that he's just writing this, he was living in a certain country and all of this, you should know that the Beragayla had to run away from Spain. He had nothing with him. The only thing he had was a calendar that he made, and finally came to Amsterdam, and he printed his book or whatever. So you shouldn't think that he's dealing with the nice Goyim. He's dealing with the Inquisition Goyim, and nevertheless, that's the story that he's giving over. So okay, let's see the next Gemara. Meisvei, Halekech grutis min ovid kechavim. If someone buys inkets, little pieces of silver from a non-Jew. Now, amongst these pieces, there's a little tzelem over there. There's an idol that's amongst these inkets. Now, there's a problem here, because what's he going to do? What's he going to do? He buys this whole thing. He's not allowed to sell it. He's not allowed to make money from this idol. And he can't destroy the idol and say, "Oh, I've destroyed it," and all of this, because a Jew can't get rid of an idol. Only a non-Jew can destroy an idol to make it permissible. The non-Jew says, "I'm not worshiping this idol anymore. It doesn't work." He can be mavatal it, but a Jew can't say that I'm going to destroy that idol and then it's batal. So imaj shalei nasan moyis mashach. If before he gave the money, he did a mashicha, he pulled it, then yachzer, the mashicha does nothing, and he can still return it back. It didn't become his yet. But if after he gave the money he did the mashicha, then yoylach and aliyam melach, then he's stuck with it, and he has to take its value and throw it into the sea. Can never be mevatel. The Jew lost on this purchase. Now, v'iyamrit mois kainais.
So he can acquire it, but he can't ever get rid of it,
Right.
or can't use it and can't ever get
He
rid of
ends
it.
up with this is like buying a used car that doesn't work. Then you're stuck with this thing that.
So it's like
How do you buy an avodah?
So he bought this whole
he's a scrap metal.
in
He's a
amongst
scrap
it.
metal dealer.
right. He's a scrap metal dealer.
But could you buy an avodah zarah separately?
Yeah,
Independently.
the purchase is going to be good, but it's a
There's
prohibition.
no value to it.
What if you purchase it
The
to
guy had value to it.
raise the kedushin? A shoe buys no church, it makes it into
So
a
it was
Right.
already, by the fact that they sold it, it was mavatal.
Yeah.
You don't-
Yeah.
you
Although
don't
they do
sell it.
say you're supposed to wait a certain time before you move in there.
I
They
know,
have
well, the guy sold this.
But isn't the sale of the avodah zarah the bittul?
Not necessarily. If you didn't know about it. Then. So the problem here is that the money was given. V'yamrit ma'is kainais. In the sefer, the money was given. Why does it have to tell me in the sefer after he gives the money he does mashicha? According to Rabbi before, that says that when you're dealing with a non-Jew, money is what makes the acquisition. If we say ma'is kainais, mashicha lamali. Why do I need the mashicha to be mentioned in the sefer? But that's when the sale is going to be final. The Gemara says, the non-Jew said, I'm making this a sale the way the Jews do it. So therefore, the acquisition is going to be done the way the Jews do the acquisition. And when the Jew pulled it, that's the kinyan. The Gemara has a problem with this. If the guy accepted that the way this sale is going to function is according to Jewish law, then why do we need the money there? Jewish law would mean that you don't that you do mashicha. So why do we need the money to be exchanged? The Gemara says hachi kamar afal pi shenasan ma'is. What it means is even if he gives the money, I mashach in Eily. When it says in the sefer that he gives the money, then he pulls it, what it means is that even if he gives the money, he still has to pull it. You really don't need the money there. In other words, even if he gives the money, that doesn't do the kinyan. He still has to pull it because the guy accepted to do according to the Jewish law. Gemara says hihachi kasher reisha. What was the first case? First case was if he pulls it before he gives the money, then he just gives it back and says, I never acquired this. If he pulls it after he gives the money, that's the seifa, then he's stuck with it and he has to throw it into the Dead Sea. So, what we're saying here is that the money wasn't significant. The only thing that's significant is the pulling it. So what about the Reisha? The Reisha, he said he pulled it and he didn't give the money, he can just return it. Why can he return it? He can't return it. It was a sale. He's stuck with this thing now. Amar Abaya Reisha Mishum Dika Mekach Tois. Abaya says in the Reisha there was a mistake in the sale, and that's why he's allowed to return it, even though there was a Mashiach that was done, and we don't care about the money. Amalei Rava Reisha Mishum Dika Mekach Tois Seifa Leka Mekach Tois. Rava tells him in the Seifa there was no mistake in the sale. He also ends up with this Avodah Zarah that he can't do anything with. Elam Rava, rather Rava says Reisha v'Seifa Mekach Tois. They both have Mekach Tois. However, there's a difference. Reisha de Layav Zuzei. In the Reisha, he didn't give the money. So it doesn't look like the Jew is selling. You see, what's going to happen here? The Jew's going to go back to the guy and he's going to say, "Take this idol back." He's going to hand him the idol, and the guy is going to give him the money for that idol that he paid already in the Seifa. In the Seifa he paid, in the Reisha he didn't. In the Reisha, he goes back to him and he hands him the idol. He says, "This, I never bought this and I don't owe you for it," because he never gave the money yet. In the Seifa, he already gave the money. So when he goes back and hands him the idol, the guy gives him the money, and it looks like there's a transaction that just took place, that a Jew sold an idol to a guy. So that's why he's not allowed to do that. So it's all like a gzeira here. It doesn't have to do with the sale. If the sale was valid or not, it has to do with the returning. When you're returning it, it looks like you're making a new sale. Seifa Diyav Zuzi, Mechsek Kaved Scham B'Yad Yisrael, looks like there's a idol in the hands of a Jew that's being sold to a non-Jew, and that's why he's not allowed to return it. Okay. Abaya Malach. What was Abaya's logic? Abaya had said that in the Reisha there's Mekach Tois. We're discussing a Jew that bought a bunch of pieces of silver from a non-Jew, and one of them was an idol. He's trying to get rid of it, so he wants to go back and give it back. And there's a difference if the money was given or not, if he can do it. So if the money, if he had already given money, then he can't go back and get his money back.
Why is it a Mekach Tois?
He never wanted this. He wanted just plain silver. He didn't want an idol. With this, he can't do anything with.
Mekach Tois implies that the person who sold it did something wrong. You know, I bought 10 pounds of gold and you sold me 10 pounds of bronze.
Right. But Mekach Tois also has to do with the intention of the buyer. What was he buying this for? If you buy something for a certain purpose and it's clear to the seller what you're buying it for, and he gives you the item that doesn't work for you.
The seller doesn't know the laws of Avodah Zarah. The seller's a guy. He gave you 10 pounds of metal just like you asked for it. And also,
I don't know if that's true. I think one thing that was very clear is that the Jews did not worship idols, and the Goyim did.
yeah,
And
but he gave him
it should be clear to the non-Jew that the Jew doesn't want an idol.
He gave him a whole bag of little pieces of shards of metal, and in there was one little piece.
Today, you have to compare it. Today it would be pork. You know, today we don't have this. We don't know about idols, really. But today there would be one thing that every non-Jew knows, is that the Jew doesn't want pork in his soup or whatever. That's one thing that's clear. So here he's ending up with an idol in his bag. It's clear that this is not what he wanted to purchase. So now what's Abaya going to do? Abaya says that the sale is only invalid in the first case, where the money was not given. Why is it only invalid over there? It should be Mekach Tois in both. So Abaya says like this: Reisha Mekach Tois, the Layoda the Holayav Leizuzei. This is an incredible thing. Seif Alav Mekach Tois, who the Kivan the Yav Zuzi Kika Mashach Ibayle Liyune of Ahadam Mimshach. It's a very strange svara here. It goes like this.
Oh, there wasn't
Once-
a Mekach yet in the Sefer.
No, we're going now that the main thing here was the Mashiach, and we don't need the money. And so both of them had Mashicha. Both of them had pulling. So both of them were the Kinyan was done already. Bais says the first one, it's Mekachtais. The reason why the first one is Mekachtais is because he didn't give the money yet. So he wasn't comfortable looking and examining the items. So he was relying totally on the seller. In the Seifa, you already gave the money. You should have examined the items better. The fact that you didn't examine the items is your fault. It's the buyer's fault for not examining it correctly, properly, and therefore there's no mekachtais in the Seifa. Because it was that was the obligation, responsibility of the buyer at that point to look at it, and the Jew should have looked at it. Rav Ashi Amar, it's a funny thing. It becomes this. It's sort of like you should have known I'm a guy. You should have checked it over. It's funny that it becomes his obligation like that. Rav Ashi Amar midareisha mashicha eina kaina seifanami mashicha eina kaina. 1 second. Rav Ashi says we're talking about a non-Jewish sale here. It's not when he's not accepting to follow the Jewish laws. He's doing it the non-Jewish way. Mashicha doesn't work. It has to be money. What's your whole problem? That it says that Mashicha in the Seifa, that's just a continuation of the Reisha. What we wanted to say was that Mashicha doesn't work. In the Reisha it didn't work. In the Seifa it says he gave the money and was Mashach. That's because in the Reisha we said Mashach, that he pulled it. But don't ask any questions about this. It doesn't work. Mashicha doesn't work. It didn't work in the Reisha. You wanted to make the cases symmetrical. We put Mashiach in the Seifa also, even though that's not what we're dealing with. It resolved all the issues here. Ravina Amar Mida Seifa Mashiach Kaina Reisha Nami Mashiach Kaina. Ravina goes back and says it's the opposite. The non-Jew is accepting to follow Jewish law, and what's considered an acquisition here? Mashiach, and that's what worked in the Seifa. And that should work in the Seifa, in the Reisha as well. It should be a valid sale. This is Hachi Kamar. V'Reisha Hachi Kamar. Imlei Nasan v'lei Mashach Yachzer. What the Reisha means is that if he didn't do Mashicha either, you have to read this in. It doesn't fit perfectly. The Reisha would say something like this. Im ad shaloi nasan mois mashach. It means to say if you before you gave the money or pulled it. You have to add in like an or over there. It doesn't fit perfectly. So then you can exchange it back. The Gemara says 1 second. You didn't give the money and you didn't pull it. Ma yachzer. What are you exchanging back? You can return it. What are you returning? You never took it and you never gave money. There's no return over here. So what do you have? You walk by a store and you didn't make any purchase. You can return it. Like what do you mean you return it? You didn't buy anything. Gemara says yachzer bidvarim. You can retract from your words. Kasavar dvarim yesh b'hem mishum michos ramanim, because this brisa holds that if you have a verbal agreement, then if you retract, then you're violating the trust. You're breaching the trust that goes along with the verbal agreement. And here we're saying that you're allowed to retract. When do we say that a verbal agreement, if you don't keep it, it's a breach of trust? That's only a Jew from a Jew, that the Jew is expected to keep his word. But when you're dealing with a non-Jew, that they don't keep their word, so then we don't have the breach of trust, because in their world there's a whole sale, there's a whole world of language that's all not practical. It's like the Muslim radio, it's just the Olam Adibar. There's nothing over there. When they were losing one of the wars, they said we're winning. There's a whole world of words. That's not the reality. That's not so. You don't have to follow. You don't have to keep it real if they're not keeping it real. Okay.
But it's still not a Kenyan, even between Jews.
Yeah, there was no Kenyan.
No
there.
Kenyan.
There was no Kenyan
It's
at
just
all.
talk.
Right. Now, if I have to point something out over here. Point something out. Even by a Jew, Taisvis on the next page, Lahani Mil Yisrael Mi Yisrael. He says we never have Mechusrei Amana if a person's going to lose all his money because of that. If it's a real loss, you don't have Mechusrei Amana. You don't have a breach of trust. If the person's going to lose everything, over here, he doesn't have to keep his word and then lose everything. You can say, no, I never signed, I never made the kinyan, I never did this. He can get out of it. So why over here are we saying that no, by a Jew from look, the Jew is losing everything here on this item. This whole item is a full loss. Now, because if it would have been from a Jew, he would have had to keep it. Taisa says what it means is that the mechusrei amana, the breach of trust, would have made it that it would have been considered as if the non-Jew had the money, and it would have appeared to be a sale. As if. It's all an as if. It's not like that it really would have happened. It would have been as if he had the money. We said before that there was an issue of exchanging the money for the item. If there was mechusrei amana to gesund, and he was giving it back, then it would have that issue of him returning an item that was already sold, as if it would be looked at as if it's his. And we mentioned before that in Abaya, that once he gives the money, then he's supposed to examine the item, and it's mekach tais, and we don't say it's mekach tais because he should have examined the item. Taisus points out, he says we never say that by any other mekach tais. Whenever you buy an item and you go home and you take it out and the thing doesn't work or whatever, it's not. You never say the seller can never tell the buyer you should have looked at it. It's your fault. You walked out of my store without trying it. There was an outlet over there. You should have plugged it in. We never say that. We say mekach tais. You say I didn't know that it was broken. I didn't know that it wasn't the item that I wanted. So Taisus over here says that when you buy these inkets from a non-Jew, then you should have been more careful. It's your fault. That you should have known, which is an interesting thing, as we said.
That's what you said, Ram. That's just what you said.
Exactly.
Okay. The
So you're in
Mishnah.
good company.
Kol HaKodshim. Going back into Kodshim now.